Good morning. I'd like to call our Policy and Legislation Committee to order. Want to welcome all of you that are here with us today, and should there be anyone online, we'd like to welcome you. Want to remind our board members and any other people that are speaking before us today that please use the microphone because we are being recorded for minutes, and we want to make sure that we do not leave out anything very important. Also, I want to mention that in our P&L, we have committee members David Mathis, Joette Johnson, Jacqueline Lynn, Joyce Kriminger, and Chris Hanley. And those would be the people, even though we welcome our members to sit in on all the meetings, those would be the members that would make the motions and second and going forward. At this time, I'll ask for approval. Is there any objection to approving the minutes as presented on March the 4th? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to approving the agenda as it's presented? Hearing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. At this time, we appreciate those of you that are here today, your interest in public education. Those that are speaking, we will allow 5 minutes for your comments. And since we're hearing your comments for the first time, it's our policy to accept those comments as information. And if we have any questions or need any further information, we'll contact you later. So we thank you for understanding our procedures. At this time, I'd like to call on John Tyler, our parliamentarian.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Under the for approval section of your agenda, you'll notice item number 1, which is a waiver request from Greenwood County School District 52 related to an athletic ineligibility determination. As this committee is aware, South Carolina Code Section 5939-160C allows the state board, or gives the state board, the authority to waive an ineligibility determination under the following circumstances. Number 1, if misinformation has been provided by district personnel that caused the ineligibility. Number 2, the long-term absence was due to a medical condition that caused the ineligibility. Or, number 3, any reasonable circumstances determined by the State Board of Education. I would like to remind the committee and the general public and those in attendance that executive session is appropriate to hear and discuss these matters as they contain information, sensitive information about minors protected by HIPAA and or FERPA.
Thank you, John. Is there any objection to the Policy and Legislation Committee going into executive session to discuss the matters that have been prepared to be presented before us today? Hearing none, I declare the Policy and Legislation Committee in executive session. And at this time, if you all that are not involved in this would exit to the left, and we'll bring you back in when we go back into open session. Don't leave, though. That we are back in open session. And are there any further questions? And if not, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the athletic waiver request for Greenwood School District 52.
Okay.
And I second it, Johnson.
And second by Johnson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Thank you, Coach Wyatt.
Thank you.
And good luck to the young lady.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
At this time, we have a request for an exemption from Code 5914 25 instructional day waivers, and I believe that Matthew Ferguson, our Deputy Superintendent, will be presenting that. Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Allison, members of the board. I never thought when I took this job that I would be the calendar police, but that is what I have done for the last 2 years. Particularly this year because we had a lot of inclement weather days. But I am speaking today on behalf of the South Carolina school districts that are requesting a waiver due to severe weather disruptions. South Carolina Code 59-1-425 permits the State Board of Education to waive the requirements to make up instructional days beyond the 3 that local school boards are authorized to forgive. This waiver authority exists precisely for the types of situations we've experienced this year. And so how the process works is that the law requires that every school district in the state have 3 weather makeup days on their calendars. So every district must make up the first 3 days. The law then allows the local school boards to forgive an additional 3 days. And once that has happened, it allows the local school boards to petition the state board to forgive an additional 3 days. There are also processes by which a school district can make up days through canceling during spring break, adding time on the end of the day, and those plans must be approved by the department. And where we are today is that there are, I guess I should say, you all lived through it, but we had more inclement weather this year than in many, many years past. So as y'all know, we began the year with Tropical Storm Debbie that flowed through and disrupted the start of many school districts' school year. Followed shortly thereafter by Hurricane Helene, which really took the western part of the state by surprise, and there were many districts that missed more than 8 days during Hurricane Helene. Since then, we have also had weather storms in January, where we had 2 instances of snow and ice in the upstate particularly. That has since been followed by wildfires, both in the low country and in the upstate. And so this has been a year of a lot of weather disruptions. What I will also say, though, is that the district leaders have really been working hard to make the every reasonable effort to minimize learning loss. They've implemented e-learning where it was possible. They have made up days where they could. And where we are, despite all of those disruptions, is that the vast majority of districts across the state need no forgiveness. They were able to make up the time. They were able to work within the current law for local board forgiveness. But there are just a few who are at the point where they are requesting state board forgiveness for those 3 days. And what we are asking today is that we are recommending as a staff that the board forgive those 3 days for these listed school districts. We are also asking that the board forgive, there is one school district that only needs forgiveness of 2 days, but we are requesting that the board go ahead and authorize one more in case there is an inclement weather day between now and then, so that we don't have to go through this whole process again to have that approved by their local board and it come to the state board.
Dr. Ferguson, is that school listed within the list that we have before us?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay.
And so that you know as well, there is only one school district, despite all the things that have happened this year as far as inclement weather, that are beyond what this process allows for, and that is Spartanburg 4. And Spartanburg 4 has one additional day that they're going to have to make up, absent the General Assembly making another allowance. And that was due to there was mold in a building following Hurricane Helene. When they tried to come back, they had to take an additional day because there was mold due to the water leaks that happened during the storm.
All right. Are there any questions?
I have one.
Remind me how many e-learning days we are giving the districts?
Districts have up to 5 e-learning days. And that's a great question, Ms. Kreminger, too. What we've talked about with districts, though, is that e-learning should only be used when it is appropriate. And so there were several districts that I think rightfully made the call that if the county did not have power, they didn't have access to internet, e-learning was not an appropriate response, and they should be closed instead.
Any other discussion or
Yeah,
questions?
Dr. Ferguson,
Dr. Hanley.
as you talked about all these various things, I was a little disappointed. There was no talk of locust, you know. I was waiting for all of that. So,
Well, and Dr. Hanley, I'm kind of joking, but one of my most favorite memos that I got to write this year was around high school football championships. And so e-learning is not an appropriate response for high school football games, and neither is closure. So if it's in your 180 days, we can probably not go to school during a hurricane, but we should probably go to school during a football game.
Very good. Any other discussion? Okay, I entertain a motion at this time.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the request for the exemption.
Okay, Mathis makes the motion. Is there a second?
second,
Preminger,
Hanley.
second.
Okay, lots of that.
Everybody.
Second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? The motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. At this time, for information on our charter schools in South Carolina, we'd like to welcome Mika Childs, who's our Director of Office of Education Choice and Family Engagement in a Division of Strategic Engagement. Welcome, Mika.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share an update with you. The reason we thought it was beneficial to move forward in bringing you this information item is it's just part of the superintendent's ongoing focus on strengthening the charter school sector. The State Board of Education plays an important role in promulgating policies or regulations in the charter school space. In fact, later this afternoon, we are bringing forward a recommended update that we are glad you are supporting. The reason for this charter school update is as we are moving forward and trying to improve our interaction with authorizers and with charter schools, we want to make sure that we're keeping the State Board of Education informed and level-setting where things are with charter schools in our state. So I expect that this will be the beginning of an ongoing conversation. This update will be very high level, but please trust and know that we'll come back before you with more frequent updates, but wanted to begin with making sure we're all understanding some high-level information about charter schools in South Carolina. And then I'll also try to remember anytime we come before the board with this sort of information item to make sure we're highlighting some of the things that are just happening in specific charter schools. So to begin, looking at charter schools in South Carolina, main thing I want to point out here is just the where we are with authorizing in South Carolina. We do not, as an agency currently, play an evaluative role with authorizers in South Carolina. But as a state board, we think it's important for you to know the types of authorizers that exist in South Carolina and a few numbers associated with the different authorizers. To begin with, there are 3 types of authorizers in South Carolina. There are local authorizers. Those are our traditional school districts. We currently have about 9 local school districts that are authorizing charter schools, meaning they sponsor or have a charter school in their district that their local board has approved to operate in their district. And you'll see in that table to the right the count of schools by those local authorizers. About 7,000 students are enrolled in charter schools that are sponsored by locally authorize charter schools. We then added an additional authorizer to our state because from a policy perspective, it's important for states that allow charter schools to have multiple authorizers, multiple types of authorizers. And so historically, we've had local school districts that had many options, but within a district's jurisdiction, that local school district was the only entity that could authorize. The State General Assembly decided, well, we want to provide other options for those who want to bring forward charter schools, and formed the South Carolina Public Charter School District. And so that was the first state authorizer. It currently authorizes about 40 schools, it's one is the first statewide authorizer, meaning its jurisdiction overlaps with the geographic boundaries of the state. They can sponsor a charter school anywhere in the state. Then a few years later, the General Assembly followed suit with what was happening in other states and what represents sound policy and allowing institutions of higher education. In our state law, we refer to them as institutions of higher learning. So allowed institutions of higher education to choose to become a charter school sponsor or a charter school authorizer. And so institutions of higher education are not required to authorize charter schools. They may do so, and if they decide they'd like to, they have to register through a process that the South Carolina Department of Education manages. And once they go through the registration process, then they are allowed to go through the charter school application process and choose to authorize or sponsor a charter school. The reason I keep saying sponsor and authorize is because currently in South Carolina, we have historically said sponsor, but over time, nationally, the term authorizer has begun to be more of what people refer to. So usually today, the term authorizer is used. So you authorize a charter school. But those of us who've been in South Carolina working with charter schools for sometimes often will still say sponsor. And so those terms are basically interchangeable, but not exactly. In terms of institutions of higher education, we currently have 3. Charter Institute Erskine was the first to come on board. It currently has more than 20 schools. Then Limestone Charter Association began authorizing charter schools. And now we have Voorhees University, which registered in November of 2024 and is now able to authorize charter schools. Important thing to know about institutions of higher education, as I mentioned earlier, they are not required to sponsor charter schools, but they may. And they also, when formed as authorizers, they too form statewide charter school authorizers. So currently we have 4 statewide charter school authorizers. Okay. Any questions before I move forward?
How many did you say that Limestone had?
Limestone currently has 13 charter schools.
Is there a number, is there a limit as to how many they can sponsor?
There is not. Our state has no caps on charter schools.
And Zamika, if a school wants to move from one authorizer to another, that's possible?
They may transfer. I'll describe how that works. There's an exception currently in place, but outside of that exception, when a charter forms, it is a contract between the authorizer and a charter school. Currently, a charter school may transfer, but both parties in the contract have to agree to it. And so in that case, the charter school has to want to transfer, the authorizer has to approve that, and then the receiving district, so the receiving authorizer has to agree to receive the transferring charter school. So that may occur with the agreement between the 2 parties in that charter school agreement, and then with the receiving authorizer agreeing. And the way these agreements take place is the board of the charter school has to engage the board of the originating authorizer. If they agree, then the receiving authorizer's board of trustees board of directors also has to agree. And so the authorizers have policies for how they manage transfers, but those steps are the high levels of what has to occur for a transfer. I mentioned an exception, and simply because you asked a direct question, I will share it with you. There is currently a proviso in place that creates an exception to that process. It affects really only one authorizer. Currently, the charter schools that are authorized by Erskine don't have to go through that kind of bilateral agreement process. A charter school can unilaterally transfer, but the requirement that the receiving authorizer approve the transfer still exists.
And it's my understanding from what you said that we as a state, or you as the State Department, have no authority of how many or anything in that process at all.
There is not a limit on a cap on the number of charter schools that can exist in South Carolina. Now, in terms of practices that can control the number, charter schools that seek to apply have to go through a process, and that process does put limitations on it in the sense that a charter school that wants to form the committee has to bring forward a letter of intent. They have to apply to the authorizer. The application process is rigorous. The authorizer has to approve the application, and then they enter into a ready-to-open process. And that has with it, I'd say, challenges that make it such that we are providing options for families by creating flexibility so that charter schools can come forward. But it is a daunting task. And so those are things that have limited the number of charter schools that have come forward, but not because of an arbitrarily set cap by the General Assembly or by the State Board or by the Department of Education.
So you do get involved in the process
Yes.
when that, okay.
The way the State Department of Education is involved, and I'll back up, the State Board of Education, you promulgate a regulation that drives the application process based on existing statute. And so that's 43601. That's a reg that you hold. Within that reg, based on the law, the South Carolina Department of Education does have to put forward a template for what must be included in all charter school applications. And so when a charter school desires to come forward, the planning committee, and if I'm being too detailed, please tell me, because I do like to talk about charter schools. They're awesome. A planning committee that wants to bring forward a charter school first must submit a letter of intent to the Department of Education and to the authorizers that they would like to consider coming before. Then, later in February, the next calendar year, they submit the actual application. That application has to come to the State Department of Education and to the authorizers that they are applying to. So all authorizers have kind of a core content that's in their template based on what the Department of Education has put forward, because that template is required by law. They can add components to it, so there is some variation in the application, but there are core components that the State Department of Education sets in our statutory authority. But actually approving the charter school, that is an authorizing practice that authorizers conduct. Am I explaining that clearly? Okay.
But that could change based on who is authorizing them.
The
If it's a-
application process?
So if it's a school district that authorized it, the oversight would probably be different than if, or
The
not.
application is the same whether it's a locally authorized or a statewide authorized applicant.
Okay.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Just on the structure, there's 20 local authorizers in South Carolina, and evidently those local school boards are the governing body for those charter schools, is that right?
Correct. They are, yes, sir.
And then, so the public charter school district has 44 schools. Each one of them have their own board of directors?
So in terms of governance, the authorizer is the LEA for the charter school. So that, I think, is important to understand. The authorizer, like a traditional school district, has its own board of trustees, right? Underneath that, any charter school, whether they are locally authorized or authorized by one of the statewide authorizers, each charter school has its own board, okay?
Even if it's local authorized?
Correct.
So is the funding model different from the three different authorizers?
The funding model is not different based on whether you are locally or state authorized.
So a local school board that is authorizing, the charter school still doesn't get the property tax portion of that funding, is that right?
That is correct, and I would have to check whether any local school districts supplement the state and federal funds with local funds. But you are correct, when the law passed in 1996, we're coming up on our 30th anniversary soon, the intent was that transportation and property tax, those things were not covered for charter schools. And over the years, there have been various decisions made by the General Assembly to directly appropriate different things, but ultimately that's the way the funding model works. Charter schools don't receive the local funds, but I can check whether or not any local districts choose to supplement charter school funding.
Do I understand that the state now gives a per pupil, just like our traditional schools?
Yes, they receive, I think it's now called the statewide formula. I'll have to
Yes,
get
the statewide
actual
formula.
term. Yeah.
So that would be what, about 6,000 a child?
Yes, yeah, we may be bumping up to about 7,000 now.
Right. So they get that.
And that's just state, that's not the federal funding.
Yeah,
And,
that's state.
and I will tell you that some of the specific questions you're asking, I can dig into those and bring forward
Very good. That would
an
be
information
great.
item that will dig into the funding. I probably wanted to use this time to go through at a high level, get a sense of where questions are, and if it's desires of the board, clearly governance is an area where you all would like to know a bit more, and then specifically the funding at a very detailed level.
When you do the funding, could you also include what benefits are derived by the institutions of higher education for their involvement as being an authorizer?
Okay, and so
That would be good.
so you're getting into whether or not there's a funding or financial incentive for an institution of higher education to enter chartering? Okay, actually, let me
Right.
make a note of that.
Yeah.
Not just financial? Okay. Make sure I
Yeah,
take
and
those
we
notes.
can move on those questions. If there are questions that this board has that you are not in a position to answer today, then we can submit those to you.
Yes, that will work, and the reason I just mentioned that is because I always want to be sensitive of your time, and I have several slides. Some will address questions you're asking, and so I'm comfortable continuing on or staying with the existing questions.
Yes, keep
whatever
going.
you would prefer. Okay. So for a charter school to form, a planning committee, so that's a group of people, decide that they want to bring forward an application. They submit a letter of intent to the agency and the authorizers just to let them know we're interested in forming a school. Those letters of intent are due November. So, for example, the current application cycle we're in, we refer to it as the 2025 application cycle. The applications that we are now considering were first letters of intent submitted in November of 2024, just informing the authorizers and informing the State Department of Education that there is a planning committee that's interested in bringing forward a charter school. By February 1st, applications were due. We had 33 applications submitted. And so in terms of the pipeline, there were 86 letters of intent submitted, but some planning committees submitted applications to more than one authorizer because they were still considering what's the best fit for the instructional practice, instructional model that they would like to conduct at their school. That worked out to 33 applications actually submitted to authorizers in February of 2025. Authorizers are now going through that process of reviewing, evaluating those applications to determine by early May which charter schools they are going to approve and which they are going to deny. And later I'll show you a breakdown of how many applications were received by authorizer. So we are in the 2025 application window. Any school that's approved this spring would not open until school year 26-27. So main thing I want you to see here is that there is a process that all charter school applicants follow. It is the same whether they're applying to a local authorizer, a statewide authorizer, and within statewide authorizers, the same whether they are applying to the South Carolina Public Charter School District or institutions of higher education. It's the same process. But it is the authorizers who approve or deny. Now, per law, there's an appeals process, and there are things that turn about if there are exceptions, but very high level, that's the process. So we are a few weeks out from seeing which schools are approved. And these will be schools that then enter what the authorizers refer to as a ready-to-open process, just to make sure they're managing that project of getting that school open, hopefully by July, August of 2026.
Is there any particular reason why Limestone has 17? I mean, it seems like that they,
That gets into, so we are learning what healthy portfolios look like for authorizers. So if you start with our statewide authorizers, when you have a new authorizer enter the sector, they'll go through a period of growth where they're just growing as a district. And so they'll go from 0 schools to 4 or 10. And they, as authorizers, will figure out what's the good mix of schools and what's a number that's going to work for us. That's not set by the state, and that's not anything that there's an exact number, but more it's a matter of portfolio management, all right? And so if I were to describe it, Limestone is more in a period of growth right now. And there's nothing good or bad about that. That's just where they are as an authorizer. Whereas the South Carolina Public Charter School District, they've been around a bit longer, they've received fewer applications, and that's not a bad or a good thing. These are just numbers based on this current application window. I'd also say the South Carolina Department of Education, we don't play a role in authorizing, but we have been working with authorizers more closely over the last year to learn more about their charter development process and what do they do to try and cultivate more applications. Because if they're there in a period where there are desires of more schools, how do they recruit? What are those practices? That's an authorizer practice. But to answer your question, Limestone is just in a different period of growth for their portfolio. You notice Voorhees just was registered in November. They received 4 applications. That's not a high or a low, good or bad number. It's just that's the number of applications they received. I think a good thing that represents a level of stability in charter school space is that Voorhees intentionally did not choose to lean on transferring schools as a way of growing their portfolio, because that's a concern about a new charter authorizer entering the field and then trying to grow their portfolio by recruiting from other authorizers. Again, that's not a bad or a good thing, but it introduces a level of instability to the market or to the sector that we want to be mindful of. And we're glad that their leadership has decided to grow right now by developing new charter schools. Okay.
So the State Department has oversight on the performance of those charter schools.
Okay. We have oversight over the performance of charter schools in the same way we have oversight on the performance of all schools. They are all subject to the state's accountability system. They all will receive report cards. However, charter schools are actually subject to two different forms of accountability that's a bit different than traditional schools. One, they are schools of choice. So at any point, a parent has flexibility to say, I don't want my children in that school, and they are more inclined to pursue other options. And so being a school that doesn't have, a resident district that zones children for the school subjects them to a different type of accountability than is the case with traditional schools. The other thing that's honestly a subject of policy discussion is that in our charter school law, there's a provision that requires that any charter school that performs poorly 3 years in a row is subject to automatic closure. And that's something that charter schools face that traditional schools don't face. And so accountability within charter schools is different, but I've heard the notion bandied about the charter schools are unaccountable and not subject to accountability. That's just far from true as we've structured charter schools in South Carolina.
Are there any charter high schools that are focused on CTE?
Different, in fact, we'll talk about one today. That does in part depend on how you define CTE. However, yes, there
I'm looking at the trades.
Yes. There are, well, first I'd say the superintendent of education is very interested in developing more charter schools. We as an agency don't authorize, but we can do all we can to encourage those who would bring forward a charter school to look at presenting children with more options in the CTE space, particularly as it relates to opportunities for job shadowing and apprenticeships. But there are such charter schools, and I can make a note to pull together a list for you.
I'd like to know, do the students in these charter schools, they all take the same assessment? I know you say 3 years and fail and they can close them.
Yes, so they take the SC Ready and the assessments at the high school level. The only place there would be an exception would be possibly some of the schools that are focusing on credit recovery, but even within that, they're still subject to flexibilities that are permitted to traditional schools. Okay.
Yes, sir. Mr.
I'm not
Richardson.
on this committee. Mika, I don't know, excuse me, I don't know if you recognize my name, but we've talked before.
Yes.
I'd like to have another talk with you at some time. This is not the time or the place, but maybe next week or something. Could we, you and I, maybe you reach out to me, or you want me to reach out to you?
I'll reach out to you.
Okay,
Yes,
okay. Thank you.
sure.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. So, Mika, you have other slides to go through. We
Yes.
keep interrupting you, but I'm sorry.
Charter school management. Our state law permits management organizations to partner with charter schools to help them, depending on the level of involvement the charter school wants. So a couple of important points. Charter schools are not required to work with management organizations. Even when working with management organizations, they still are required to meet the requirements for board governance. And so the management organization does not control the school. That board of that charter school is still responsible for that charter school. And the other thing I'll say is in our state, we really have 4 management structures. One is freestanding, so that's a traditional charter school that is brought forward and has no management organization associated with it. And then we'll have, you'll see we have about 10 charter management organizations. They are nonprofit, and then 13 EMOs operating in our state. They are for-profit and not-for-profit, for-profit. That's not a good or a bad thing. That's just how they are structuring their organization. And then lastly, something that's somewhat unique to South Carolina is what we're calling network of schools. And so we are still formulating our policies around that, but we have 2 networks right now, 9 schools that are partnering with organizations that are a network of schools. Some would say these are just CMOs or EMOs, but they contemplate themselves to be a bit different. Okay? Any questions about management? Okay. We will bring forward more information to you on charter school performance. Mainly, this is making the point that we do look at, and I'm sorry, the pie chart's not coming forward very clearly. We'll bring forward more information with you on details about how charter schools are performing, but mainly want you to know we do, through state law, issue state report cards for charter schools like other schools. We monitor the graduation rate for charter schools. And, we can get into math performance, college and career readiness. Mainly, charter schools are held accountable by the state. In terms of location of charter schools, these pins don't represent where all the charter schools are. It's just highlighting the different regions. And you'll see that they're not evenly distributed. And so as we're moving forward as a state, we're actually experiencing a high period of growth. Some of you who've worked with charter schools for a while know we went through a couple of decades where we hovered at about 20 to 30 schools and just didn't seem to be able to get more charter schools. Now we're at 104 schools, more to open this upcoming fall, and poised for more growth. But one of the things that we as an agency have been trying to emphasize under Superintendent Weaver's leadership is it's not just about growth for the sake of growth. We want high-quality growth. So high-quality number of charter schools, and to the extent there are more authorizers coming forward, doing all we can to strengthen the authorizing practice. Okay, with that, I transition to just showcasing a few schools, unless there are other questions about what I just presented. Okay.
Ms. Childs,
Sure.
Would it be possible for us to have a copy of these?
Yes.
Okay.
The slide deck?
Yeah,
Sure.
and you could send it via email to us, that would be great.
We'll share that with you. Okay, the first school, Orangeburg High School for Health Professions. And so your question, Mr. Hanley, about CTE. So Career and Technology is not in my office. I'll have to see whether or not this technically qualifies as CTE, but I would consider it to be. All right. So it allows students to choose health and science courses, and you see where we list, these are high-growth workforce areas. And so it's not just important, of course, it's important for the children, for our state, it's important for us to offer children, in this case young adults, more options to gain access to areas of high growth where there are going to be, frankly, job opportunities. And so you'll see that they offer children, or I keep saying children, these are high school kids, offer students the opportunity to acquire certifications in some important healthcare professions. I point to their graduation rate last year, 100%. I think anybody will say that's awesome. And a high or an excellent score report card. And so for the Orangeburg community and also for the state, we think this is tremendous. You'll see that last bullet where they have a virtual lab where sports medicine. Who would have thought that sports medicine would have come forward as such a high demand area of opportunity? I can remember when it was just kind of a new area of research and development, but we're seeing that there are some real strong career options for students who want to pursue that specialty. And I also draw your attention to that next to last bullet. Students are prepared for adulting, a term that I have recently accepted into my vocabulary. But just preparing them for life after high school. Because as you all probably know, it's not just about getting the high school diploma, but do you have the soft skills, do you have the life skills to help you be successful? And here you'll see just some real hands-on experiences that students can have, both in their virtual lab, but also prepare them for what it will be like when they enter the field. And if I'm not mistaken, we have someone here from the school.
Yeah, Ms. Childs, I have visited that, and they do a wonderful job there. I visited that health profession high school. It goes well. The other two schools that you want, I know you're coming before us again with some regs concerning this, and yeah, we would really like to have a copy of this
Yes.
for them to delve into for our board, because some of our board members are not sitting right now. We're getting ready to go into another committee. So with that said, we would be able to share those with everybody.
All right, very good. All right, and the other school, and so I take your cue, you want me to get through these a bit more quick looking?
Was that a cue?
Langston
Do you think that
Charter,
was?
yes.
No, I certainly don't want to, but we're getting ready to go into another session, so, yeah.
That's our fault that we run it all.
That's
okay.
true. That's
Langston
true.
Charter School, you'll see this in the slide deck that we share with you, and the other is Liberty STEAM Charter School. Lots of accolades, real great schools to visit. I'll share the slide deck and the notes with you,
Thank you.
and I appreciate your time.
I have to say of Ms. Childs, we go way, way back, and she's a Duke graduate. So we used to have some really good times together between Carolina basketball and Duke basketball.
It was more fun back then, I will say, but
It's great. Thank you so much. We look forward to you coming before us again. Okay, moving into our consent agenda, is there a motion to move action items 1 and 2 to be presented to the full board at 1 p.m. for our approval?
Kriminger, so move.
Kriminger. Is there a second?
Hanley, second.
Hanley seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, Mathis. Is there a second? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? The motion carries. Is there any other business to be brought before this committee today? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I
there
move
a-
that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Matt?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? We stand adjourned.